everyone, and welcome to this masterclass hosted by Just Like Us. We are here for School Diversity Week, when schools across the UK come together in a celebration of LGBT plus people, diversity and inclusion. Before we get started, there is a link to a video in the comments section with some tips about how to stay safe online this School Diversity Week, so definitely take a look at that. So I am super excited to be introducing the amazing and inspirational Kate Moross. They are a creative director, illustrator, author and designer with a reputation for bright, bold and colourful designs. Kate started their career in 2007 and founded Studio Moross in 2012. They've worked on so many exciting projects and campaigns, including RuPaul's Drag Race, Cadbury's, Parklife Festival and the British Film Institute, as well as with musicians like Kylie Minogue, Jessie Ware and the Spice Girls, just to name a few. They are also a regular speaker at art and design conferences, using their platforms to elevate the voices of non-binary and LGBT plus people within the creative industry. Today, I'll be asking Kate some questions. So yeah, without further ado, I am delighted to be introducing Kate Moross. So hi, Kate.
Hi, Emily. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Can you see me all right?
Yeah, perfect.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Amazing. So are you ready to just jump right into it?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay, so I've got the first question is that most young people watching this today will still be in school. What was school like for you, and how did it play a part in the person you've become today?
I was kind of a teacher's pet at school, so I really enjoyed it. I went to an independent school, which was quite academic. So I enjoyed but they were kind of focused on the arts, so I got to get involved with art and theatre and design and making things like out of woods and plastics and using computers really early. I think for me, it had a really positive effect on sort of me understanding what I wanted to do, and also, it was nice to realize that I could excel in subjects that weren't like academic subjects, because obviously not everyone is great at maths and sciences and things like that. So yeah. I really enjoyed having other subjects that I could be good at and spend time working on.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I think it's amazing that you've had that like opportunity from a young age to be more creative. And I think that's so important to like nurture creativity.
Absolutely.
So good. So I know that a lot of your work is in graphic design. So for those who are less familiar with graphic design, would you be able to explain just in like a few words, like how you would describe it?
So I guess graphic design is a form of visual communication, which is using type, images, illustration, color, layout to, communicate anything. Could be a poster design, could be a book, could be a flyer, and now we have a digital world which is more than just print, so that graphic design is relevant to websites, to apps, to any sort of digital visual design that you might interact with as well. And that might predominantly be done using computer software, softwares like Illustrator or Photoshop or things like that, where you might Figma, where you may move around images, text, pictures and colors on a screen until you're happy with what something looks like. Hopefully that's a good enough description.
Yeah, that's great, thank you. So like do you know, like, have any idea like who or what inspired you to become a graphic designer?
I think for me, when I was really young, I always enjoyed drawing. I enjoyed making things like with my hands. So I used to be really into dolls' houses, and I used to make dolls' house furniture and magazines and things like that. And although I was really creative, I didn't necessarily like want to be a painter or like be an artist. I was more interested in how I could use creativity to enhance or communicate something, rather than like a beautiful painting that you put on a wall. I liked telling stories, I like communicating ideas, I like solving problems through design, and that's kind of how, when I reached a crossroads at university, I did a foundation diploma in art and design, which is kind of 1 year between finishing your A levels and going into university, you can do a year where you get to try loads of different creative subjects, an art foundation, and then you kind of work out what you really like, because it's quite difficult to know that between school and university, because you don't really get a chance to do all of that exploring at school. And when I was at foundation, I realized that I really liked using computers and I really liked solving problems with visual tools. And I realized that design was sort of the topic for me, rather than, you know, being a fine artist or a sculptor or like other things that you might have learned about at school. I learned more that there was like this other world that I wanted to explore further.
Great. That's so interesting because I think at school, especially with art subjects, you don't get to see like the like everything that art has to offer. So yeah, art foundation sounds like it was really good.
I would say that the majority of people who I've spoken to who've done an art foundation say it's probably the best year in their educational career that they've ever taken, more so than school, more so than university, because it's very free. It's an opportunity to explore. And yeah, like you said, there's only so much you can learn within a primary school environment and a secondary school environment in the art and design areas, depending on what your school's facilities are. And, you know, usually those are the departments that struggle with facilities. So having an art foundation and being able to like make things out of wire or use computers for the first time or learn how to use a camera or develop your own film, those sorts of things are really fun and exciting when you've never done them before.
Great, thank you. So how do you come up with ideas for your art? Like, are there any differences in making art for yourself and making art for someone else, like a company you're working with?
Yeah, for sure. So, like I said before, I really noticed that I was more interested in making work that responded or reacted to a problem or a brief, more so than, say, like a personal desire to like create or draw or paint. Whereas, like, some people might just really love to sit down and set themselves a challenge. I really enjoy being set a challenge by someone else and having rules and restrictions and yeah, I feel like that's more like a personality thing, and also how you're motivated to be creative. Some people are motivated by themselves and just their desire to do something. Some people find it really difficult to be self-motivated. They need a prompt or someone sort of asking them for something. I'm like that. I need someone to say, I need this by Friday, and I'll go, okay, I'll do it for Friday. If I was just kind of left to do something for myself, it would probably never happen. So I enjoy the sort of deadlines and requirements of that kind of work.
Yeah, definitely. I'm the same. Need a deadline to get it done.
Exactly.
Um, can you tell us about the LGBT plus influences in your art, if there are any?
Um, I think I wasn't like super aware of people's identity that artists and designers that I looked up to. I was very interested in looking at women artists when I was younger, as my school was keen. I went to an all-girls school, so my school was really keen to kind of promote women in the arts to us whilst we were studying. And some of those women may have been queer, but it wasn't necessarily a topic, let's say. But I've always loved the work of Keith Haring, and his sort of more his attitude more than anything. Like, I think some people would see his style influencing mine too, but really just this sort of very open-minded, unprecious approach to making art. The idea that anyone can be an artist, that anyone can appreciate art. Just a very utilitarian, like drawing on the subway or doing murals with young people or drawing attention to political LGBTQ topics and really like just he was a brilliant unconventional and pioneer, I think, in some ways. And he brought his own identity into his work too, wasn't afraid to be himself or express things that he was struggling with or things that challenged him in his career. So yeah, I think he is an all-round great person to look to, and was a great person to look to when I was growing up and starting out in my career.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Keith Haring is such a big inspiration for a lot of people, especially LGBT plus people.
Yeah.
like the way he used his platform and everything. It was just absolutely amazing. Such a crucial time as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think he's great. So what inspired you to found Studio Moross?
I have been working as a graphic designer and illustrator for a few years, about 5 years, and I was enjoying it, but it was quite lonely to make work completely on my own. And I was really keen to kind of work with a team and work with more people. And I'm an extrovert, so I get my ideas and my energy from like working with others, and don't really work too well kind of alone. So that was my kind of main motivation, was to just use a broader name for my business so that I could work with others under that name rather than it like just being my name. And then the ability to kind of expand in what types of work I did, because when you're an individual, people think, oh, you can do this, this, and this, you can do graphic design. But when you work in a team and everything gets a bit bigger, you can say that you do more things. So you can say, oh, I'm a graphic designer and I make films, and that you can kind of expand your title without it sounding like, I don't know, like you're boasting, I guess.
Yeah.
And you can work with other people to help you facilitate and execute the things that you want to make. So that was kind of the main reason. And also I just wanted a new challenge, I think, and starting a studio had always been a dream of mine. So that's why I did it.
Yeah, I think it'd be really good in like especially in a creative setting to have a group of people to like bounce ideas off. So
Hmm.
then when you're working on big projects, I know that Studio Moross sometimes works on like huge projects, kind of like from the little details all the way up to like the huge details. So then you've got like a whole team of people with different specialities that can all like group in and create something amazing.
Absolutely. And, I studied at university this theory that like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And I feel like with teams, that's why teams are so important, because with a team, you have something bigger than just the individuals that are part of it. There's something magic that comes from different people with different backgrounds, different disciplines, different skills, kind of collaborating and problem solving and talking and working things out. And you can make things that you could never make on your own.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. So I'd like to just like jump into some of the musicians you've worked
Mhm.
with, because I've noticed that you've got like a long list of like high profile musicians and done like absolutely amazing work for them. And could you tell us a bit about your like, and it might be a hard question, but like the favorite people you've worked with and like what you created together?
To be honest, I enjoy working with like all my clients. I've had some really amazing experiences, bucket list, experiences in my life. Being able to work on the Spice Girls 2019 UK and Ireland tour and be the art director for that tour and work with a team of other really creative people was, you know, something that I never would have dreamed of happening. I didn't think it was possible for the Spice Girls to have a comeback tour in the first place, but then to work on it was another story entirely. I grew up listening to artists like Kylie as well, so to be able to work on Kylie this year and last year has been amazing and really rewarding and very, very creative. I think I'm just really fortunate that the projects that I work on, I get to have creative freedom and get to collaborate with other really talented people to bring to life things that, I never thought I would have the ability to work on. And I really enjoy working with artists who kind of have an iconic or sort of big back catalogue with lots of rich sort of imagery and design and visuals, sort of, I don't know, just a diverse set of visuals and ideas and iconography, because I love working with nostalgia, which is kind of creating that warm feeling when you see something that reminds you of something from your past or from growing up, or a record that you listened to when you were younger. And like such a powerful tool with design nostalgia, and that's one of my favorite things to work with. So working with artists like Kylie and Spice Girls and even Drag Race, which has been around for quite a while now, those projects have a sort of very, very strong brand and strong iconography, and I enjoy working with those sorts of franchises.
Yeah, I think because I remember when I like follow your Instagram. I remember when you announced that you'd been working with Kylie, and I was like, oh, that's so exciting because I thought it was like amazing, um, how you did everything up to like set design for the stage, and I was like, wow, like you do every little bit, and I think that's like really fascinating, and especially because it's with Kylie's like disco era. The design and like the photographs using everything, they would just like scream disco, like the colors, and yeah, I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I think it's really fun to work as well, like you mentioned, with themes like disco or themes that are kind of actually done a lot and you see them a lot. But I really enjoy the challenge of trying to take things one step further or make it bigger or more um, elevated or more um, in your face, or twist it or remix it with another genre. That's just something I really enjoy doing.
Yeah, I think that's so cool. So like and you've already touched upon this, but how much does like genre influence the direction of your art and design? So yeah, just think about how like genre and style change kind of your creative direction.
I try not to let genre affect the style too much, because then you can kind of get into the habit of making design work that just looks like a genre instead of making it like appropriate to that moment in time. But it is important. It's quite a powerful tool as well. You know, I've worked with an artist called Jade Bird, and she didn't want to look like a singer-songwriter classically, because she felt like people would pigeonhole her because she sings and writes her own music. So we went with actually a look that was very different to what like the genre would define her to be, if that makes sense. So you can play around with those rules as well. And sometimes you can lean right into it. You know, you make a pop record and you make it look exactly like a pop record. So, you know, a lot of people play with that as a tool in their art direction, creative direction, to mess around with the perception of that musician or of that song. If you have a really kind of sickly sweet pop song, you might give it an edgier, darker look to make that kind of offset how so bubblegum something is, you know. So it's a tool that we work with.
Yeah, I love the idea of like contrast, kind
Exactly.
of balancing it out. I think that's really interesting. So like when you are working with musicians, how closely do you work with them? Like how much influence do they have in your work, or do you have like complete creative freedom?
It's a mix. I would say that I usually have quite a lot of creative freedom, but I do get feedback, critique, or notes from all of the artists that I've ever worked with. It's never just been like, do whatever you want. There's always a process of getting approval and sign off on what we make. Um, it's easier than you would think, and then it's maybe the areas that you don't think will be difficult, that where artists have more issues. It's sometimes not with the design, it might be with the posing in the picture, or it might be with the makeup, and like those are things that you're not necessarily always able to control or predict there being worries about. um but you know, most artists, you know, you work very closely with them. You might talk to them on the phone, you definitely will meet with them, and well, whether it's digitally or in real life, and have conversations. Some artists are much more involved than others. Some artists will come and sit next to you when you edit their music video. Other artists will just only, you know, watch the final version. So it really does depend on the artist and their sort of attitude and involvement in their creative campaigns.
Yeah, I think I would bet it was really cool being able to be in contact with like icons like Spice Girls and Kylie.
Yeah, it was overwhelming.
Yeah,
but
I can
but
imagine.
but you know, I think what's so great about those experiences is that you know, when you work with an artist like the Spice Girls, you know, you need to get them in order. They, you know, when I worked with them on that project, they were like, we're so glad that you get it, like you grew up with it, it's part of your DNA, you're a fan. They were like, if you weren't a fan, then you wouldn't be able to do this job justice. Like being a fan of someone or something is really important in terms of understanding the importance, because ultimately when we work with musicians as designers and art directors and creative directors, we are sort of marketing them to their fans. You know, we're making merchandise for their fans, we're making album covers for their fans, And for artists like Kylie or the Spice Girls or One Direction or Sam Smith or those, they have huge fandoms of people who look up to them and buy their products and hang their pictures on the walls and things like that. So it's important that when you work with those artists that you get what the fans want and you're almost a fan yourself. Obviously not to a sort of harmful point, but you know, to just get it, you got to get it. You can't be indifferent or put off by the artist. You have to love it.
Yeah, like I think that it just creates a greater understanding, doesn't it? If you are a fan of something yourself, you know what fans would like to see.
Exactly. Exactly.
So yeah. So I know that like Studio Moross, you guys produce a plethora of different work, such as like branding, campaign design, merch, TV, stage design. Like there's so many aspects to like you as like a company. So which projects are the most like enjoyable to work on? Do you have any like particular favorite aspect?
I really enjoy doing tours. So designing a tour, working with other people in the tour design team. There are other roles in touring. So there's production designer, that person designs the physical stage, like, and the layout of the room and the lighting, works with the lighting designer to design the lighting. And then you have the screens design, which is often what I do as my role as well, where you design all the content and video that goes on the big video screens. Then you have a choreographer who works with the choreography. You have the costume designer, there's a whole, then you have a musical director. That person decides how the songs are going to work, and they record and manage the musicians and the artists throughout the touring process. There's so many people involved, and for that reason is why I love it, because all of those people are specialists, and then you all come together to create this tour. And and at the end of that you have tens of thousands of people who come and see what you made, and live feedback. Most projects that I make, they go on the internet or they go out to print, or a ticket goes on sale, and I don't get to see the person who's experiencing my design experience it. Whereas in a tour, I can, when I walked out into those stadiums during the Spice Girls tour, I could see everybody's face and as they watched or listened to the show, and that's definitely gives you the best feedback. I'm working on a tour at the moment for Disclosure, which we've been waiting to put out for months, and that will hopefully be coming out later this summer. So that will be a really nice opportunity to see another thing like that out in the real world.
Yeah, I bet it's like so fulfilling to see in real time people enjoying what you've created. I think that would be like probably one of the best bits.
It's definitely the best. Yeah, definitely the best.
So I know you as well as being a graphic designer and illustrator, you're also like a creative director. So I was wondering, what is life like as a creative director? Because I know like before I was researching, I didn't even know what one was.
I think it's very difficult to describe what a creative director is, because there are lots of different types of creative director. So a creative director in an advertising agency is very different to like a creative director for a brand, or a creative director for a design agency. So there are lots of different types of creative director, and it can mean various things. But for me, a creative director is someone who directs creative. Now, that might mean directing other departments who make work. So it may be overseeing something to just make sure it has the overall correct look and feel, that it has the same color palette, that it fits in with the rules and the brief that you're creating. And you may even be writing the brief. So an art director or a designer or an illustrator or an animator, they'll kind of be putting in motion an idea that someone else has come up with. Now, a creative director will be someone who may actually create that idea and then manage it throughout the process towards delivery. So for a musician, when I'm a creative director for them, say they have a new album. So Kylie, new album is called Disco. What's the theme going to be? I wonder, maybe disco. So we'll go away and come up with ideas of how we can visually manifest and communicate disco to her fans across all of the platforms. We're not just talking about like, let's do Kylie in this dress on this background. It's like you have to think about how this will last for a year to 2 years. How does the theme, what is the basis of the theme? How can we expand it? And that's kind of my job. And yeah, it like I said, you'd have to ask lots of different creative directors what a creative director is, because there's lots of different answers. But it's kind of like being at the top of that creative chain, and underneath you may have other people who have responsibilities. And I work under creative directors too sometimes. I'm not always the creative director. Sometimes I'm just the designer or the illustrator or the art director as well. So you can kind of move around in the hierarchy sometimes.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really informative. That makes a lot of sense. So, from your experience, like throughout your career and life, do you have any tips for young people who would want a career in the arts or in creative business?
It's difficult to give advice because I'm 35 now, so my experiences of how I got into the industry are completely out of date. And I also feel like even those experiences that I may have learned through others now are completely out of date in this new world that we live in. However, I do think that things that kind of get you ahead of the curve are always really helpful. So learning and new software and skills. So learning how to use a camera, learning how to use a computer, learning how to use the software into the areas that you're interested in pursuing, doing tutorials online or free courses, or just self-learning by downloading a free trial and experimenting, because software and tools and technology will help you expand your creativity beyond what you can just make with your own two hands and a piece of paper. So, you know, you never know, you might want to do something different. You might want to be a jewelry designer, you might want to be a textile designer, you might want to be an animator. There's so many things out there. The creative industries are enormous. And so sort of taking small steps can really help you understand where you want to go, because I think it can feel a bit overwhelming at times. But I think try something. If it doesn't feel right, you can at least move on to something else, and just always be tasting and testing and thinking about what you're interested in doing. And also don't be afraid to like show or share your work, whether it be through an Instagram page or having a little website or a blog, or just seeing how it feels to get something that you've made out into the world. You don't necessarily need to be selling it or making money from it. It can just be like a gallery or a photo library or something where you kind of can share your work easily, and you never know, that might get you more opportunities. Because when I started, that's what I had, a website. You know, social media, and as we know it now, didn't exist. It was very different then. So having a website was kind of much more important than having an Instagram gallery portfolio. So I had a website from quite a young age and put work up there, and I still think that's important. I don't think that's changed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's all about getting your name out there, isn't it? And like showing the world what you can do.
Yeah, making it as easy as possible for people to access your skills, and some people can be quite nervous about showing what their work looks like. But I would say that you can always take something down if you feel like you developed and you've improved, but don't wait to be the best at something to put something up. Because also, like, what is good? The good thing about working in the creative industries is that there is no rule about what's a good drawing. A drawing can be a drawing, and there are many artists out there who make work who traditionally wouldn't, their work doesn't look like, you know, a perfect Michelangelo drawing of a person. It looks like a stick man with a funny comment, and they're some of the biggest artists in the world. So, you know, just because your work doesn't look like someone else's doesn't mean it's bad, and just because it isn't as sophisticated as someone else's doesn't mean it's bad. Your perspective and what you bring to something and how you see the world and your personality is as important as your skill, and you can develop your skill and you can develop your personality too. And getting it out there is a good way of seeing a response and getting a reaction, and trying to, if you want to commercialize your work, seeing if that's possible.
Yeah, I think that it takes going to more like modern art galleries or online spaces to see that art doesn't have to be like perfect, because it's all subjective, and every type of art can be good art, because
Exactly.
yeah, there's no rules.
I think we see online I think looking at work online can be quite challenging because there are quite specific trends, and we might see like one type of graphic design or one type of illustration that's popular and think that's what good design or good illustration is, and that's not the case. You know, in order to create trends, you have to have the confidence in your own work and your own style to put it out there. And no one will create a trend by not showing their work, you know, or no one will create a splash in an industry by hiding something. So, and they won't create a splash in an industry by copying other people either. So it's really important just to kind of get your work out there, see how people respond to it, keep improving, keep developing your perspective, your point of view, keep learning and keep applying those new things that you learn to your work. And, you know, over time, things will slowly develop, and you'll develop a more confidence in your style and in your voice, in your brand, if that's where you want to take it.
Thank you. That's like great advice. Do you think being non-binary affects your work? And if so, how?
It's a good question. I mean, I think it's difficult to say because obviously how people see you, you can't control or know how other people perceive you. We do and have received more work in the last few years, which are projects that are more oriented towards queer and trans people. Because as a studio leader and as a creative director, I'm queer and trans, so people will come to me for my point of view. And also we will work with other queer and trans people to create that work too. So I feel like that has affected my work. I think it's hard to speak on behalf of our clients and people who work with us as to why they've chosen to work with us. And it's hard to know how or why I may have received advantages or disadvantages through my work because of my identity, because it's a very difficult thing to measure. But I think I'll understand it more as I move through the world and I'm more aware of things and ask those kinds of questions from people, because I do think it's an interesting question.
So, how integral do you think LGBT plus representation is within the art community?
I think it's so important. Obviously, it's difficult to measure like the industry as a whole, because now we have so many different divisions of design and art, and the design and art world. You know, I want to see people from all marginalized groups succeed and have equal representation in all industries. There is, you know, quite bad statistics in design, which is my area that I work in, representation of women, trans and non-binary people, people of color. So, you know, it's very, and working class people too. It's very important to ensure that, and disabled people too. It's very important to ensure that all of the work we're doing is uplifting and creating more access to all of those people, not just LGBTQ people. But yeah, I think it's a big part of what we do at the studio and some of the work that we do to create more access and to rewrite some of the rules of the gatekeeping of the industry, and do talks like this and as well, you know, offering our voices to people who are actually out prior, like sooner than university is where it starts, I believe. Actually speaking to younger people is more important to me than speaking to graduates, because graduates have already been to university, they've always had that opportunity and that advantage to go to art school, but it's not something that's always accessible or even on the radar of other young people. So for me, it's really important to speak to people early as possible. So we, for example, do work experience for 16 to 18-year-olds for them to see what it's like to work in a design studio, for example, as opposed to just giving loads of internships to graduates. Obviously both are important, but I think it's more important to work with younger people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just kind of showing everyone what is out there and what is possible, especially if you're from a marginalized group. You probably don't even think that creative, being like in a creative industry is like feasible or possible. So I think that's like amazing work that you do, just kind of opening the doors up for everyone.
I think it's probably, an industry with a lot of opportunity, and it's unfortunate that that opportunity isn't necessarily communicated fully to underrepresented groups because of various reasons that are too long to go into now. But absolutely, diversity in thought, diversity in background, diversity in so many areas is absolutely integral in design and arts, because essentially what we do as designers is communicate the world to the world. So if we aren't representing our audience, then that's when there's failure, and that's when there's mistakes made, and that's when we're not actually speaking to everyone. So it's absolutely integral for ad agencies, for design studios, for filmmakers, for anyone who's involved in creating marketing or consumer communication, to be diverse and to represent the real world, and to be in the boardrooms and having those conversations, and raising those arguments that other people, the common denominator don't or aren't seeing because they haven't got that perspective. So it's very, very important, and really exciting to see more people coming up into the industry and having their voices heard, and being leaders and excelling in the industry because of their diversity and because of their difference.
Yeah, I think that the more diverse people we've got kind of in every industry you can think of, the more amazing the work will be, because you've got so many perspectives, like so many life experiences. So yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we want to talk about originality comes from diversity. Like, it comes from lots of people's ideas and memories and things all fusing together, which creates almost like a recipe for something. It creates something completely new that no one has ever seen or tasted, whatever. Now, you don't get that when all the ingredients are the same. So that's why I like working with a group of people who are all from different backgrounds, and I hope to, and always when we create teams, we work with as many perspectives as we can, because that's how we make good work. That's how we make work that's appropriate to the audience. And if we're making a piece of work for a trans organization or to speak to trans people, then obviously we need trans people to be part of that story and to be making that work. So that's kind of, if you can't see it, you can't be it, and nothing about us without us. Those words get thrown around a lot, but they're really important.
Yeah, I love the ingredients analogy.
Yeah, it's a bit
So
cliche, but
I love it. So I've got time for one more question. So
Sure.
you've already done so much amazing work with Studio Moross in such a short time span, like only since 2012. It seems amazing. So what do you hope to achieve in your career in the future?
I just want to continue to sustain the business, work with more brilliant people, both like in my team as my employees, but also clients. I don't have kind of grandiose plans. I would like to return to our studio space in London at some point. We've all been working remotely for a long time. That seems like a simple goal, but it seems like it keeps on moving further away, but
Yeah.
hopefully we'll get there. Yeah, I think we just like to continue with what I'm doing and continue to enjoy and customize my work and make sure it's something that I enjoy and that my employees enjoy. And I hope to see a bigger rise of and seeing more LGBTQ plus people in the industry, making great work and really changing the landscape of the design industry.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that just change is needed and it's coming.
For sure, for sure.
So yeah, so that's all we have time for today. So thank you so much, Kate, for
I'll
joining
come back.
us.
Thank you for having me.
I had a really nice time talking with you, and I'm sure everyone watching will agree. It's been an absolute pleasure to hear you
Thank you for all the
talk
brilliant
about your career.
questions.
Oh,
Thank
no
you for all the brilliant
problem.
questions.
Thank you. So yes, bye, Kate.
Bye bye.
So yeah, this masterclass is coming to an end, but please do have a look at the other amazing masterclasses happening this School Diversity Week. You can also find more online safety resources linked in the comments of this video and other masterclasses. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and thank you to Kate, and hope you have a great school diversity week.